Welcome to Battleground Live. This is the show where we kick ass and we take names and we lock horns with the radical left. We never quit, we never surrender, from sea to shining sea and everybody in between. Welcome, Patriots, on this Wednesday. It's a new year, folks. I feel like we got off to a little bit of a rocky start here on the new year. And before I get into this terrorist attack and the horrific loss of life in Louisiana and what to expect moving forward, because I have some thoughts on all of this. And to me, it's worried me all day for a number of different reasons. We're going to get into that and a lot more on the show today, so stay right there. A couple of admin items. Savage Rich Barris, you know Wednesdays are usually Savage Wednesdays. They have been for the better part of, over a year now. Rich today, normally, he cooks this big dinner for his family, and then they have that dinner tonight. And so he couldn't make it today, but we will get him on the show as fast as possible to make up for it. Tomorrow he's traveling to see his family. So, this week's kind of a funky week for sure. With Christmas last week and New Year's on the weekday this week, kind of a crazy day, still holiday season for a lot of people. So, we'll get through it. Things will be more normal next week. Also this Friday, there's not going to be a show this Friday. And I hate to do that because I hate missing shows. And I know it's kind of crazy because I just had off for the first week ever on the show, but my first really week off in the last 4 years to spend some time with the family last week over the Christmas holiday. And so to take another day off on Friday, it's not really a day off, but to not do a show on Friday really bothers me. But we got invited, both Commander Melanie and I got invited to go down to the swearing in for the United States Senate. We're going to go and be present for our friends down there who won this last election cycle. So heading down there on Friday at some point to celebrate the Republican victory and Republicans taking back the Senate down there. And then really next week, I think we get back in the full swing of things on the show where we really get back to normal, because, we'll get back into the swing of things with Savage Rich. We'll get back into the swing of things with Brian Dean Wright. Although with Brian, normally we have Wright nights on Friday. He's trying to shuffle things around for Thursday for us, see if he could do his weekly appearance and talk to all of you guys on Thursday instead of Friday. We'll see what happens with all that. Again, kind of a crazy week with the holidays. So for everybody, not just here at Fort Parnell. So we'll see if we can get him. If we can't, we'll get back into the swing of things, full court press on all things saving this country and preserving America and our Constitution for 100 years. Start that again, really full court press next week. Also want to thank Hammer. Hammer has been with us for a long time. I think Hammerhead 2020 has been, I think he's an OG member of the Battle Crew. Been with us since I think probably the first show. I can't quite remember. So many of you all are OG members of the Battle Crew, but the show is growing. So Hammer, thanks for the Rumble Rant tip, my friend. Happy New Year. I hope you and your family and your loved ones have a great year. And 2RM, thank you for becoming a monthly supporter, which is cool. Very, very cool. This show, well, first of all, to download the Rumble app is completely free, but this show is free. And so I think you get, this is a podcast, right? So we're a little less formal around here than cable news. But I think you get information on this show, and there are others like Dan Nunn and, of course, Wendy Bell and the King, Dan Bongino. They all have podcasts right here on Rumble. But I think you get information far faster on these shows, on these podcasts, than you'll ever get on traditional news media. And we can talk about things that the traditional news media cannot. By the way, I'm talking about left or right, doesn't matter. I can talk about how the COVID vaccine was poison. I can talk about how masks didn't work. I can talk about the 2020 election. I can talk about these things without getting banned because Rumble is a free speech platform And when it's just really just me, like I said yesterday, when it comes to this show, Brock taught me the ropes, but now I'm a one-man band. I build the thumbnails, I post the live stream on Rumble, I set up the simulcast, I pull all the sound. Sounds like a lot. I mean, it is a lot. Do the show research, but because I do this on my own every day, and I do the show research on my own every day. I read all the articles, go through the news, try to tap into the news cycle. I feel like we are far better than some producer who's maybe working for a news outlet that's not necessarily hosting a show, or maybe I just feel like we're faster. And so this show is free, and becoming a monthly subscriber really helps us here at Fort Parnell keep the show independent. Obviously, having sponsors helps keep the show independent, but also monthly subscribers as well, as we continue to build out our locals platform. And the last thing I'll say before we jump into this horrific terrorist attack and do a quick talk about My Patriot Supply here real quick right at the top, is just smashing that like button. We've made, despite it being a holiday week, we've made the leaderboard every single day. Again, that's because of you. Also tell your family and your friends to subscribe to Battleground Live. Really helps the show grow. I think we're like 150 subscribers, followers away from 20,000, which is pretty damn awesome, and really a testament to what a kick-ass audience you all are. So thank you for all of that. Another quick admin item. Sorry, I'm adding things to the list, but somebody asked me about a fifth Eric Steele book. So I've got five books out. So maybe some of y'all know this, maybe you don't. But my first book is a nonfiction book called Outlaw Platoon. It's just about my platoon's time in Afghanistan. That book back in 2012 became a bestseller here in America, and now it's out in 10 countries all around the world, which is crazy because it really is just a quintessential American story. And for an American military story to be successful in other countries is kind of amazing and a blessing, all wrapped into one. But that's my nonfiction. It came out 12 years ago. 6 years after I wrote Outlaw Platoon nonfiction, I wrote my first fiction book. Practiced for that 6 years, trying to figure out the writing style with fiction. My first fiction book came out, and there are 4 of those. They're the Eric Steele franchise of political military thrillers. I think they're pretty damn. It took me a long time to figure out how to write the stories. The first one's decent. It was my first crack at fiction, but I think the second and the fourth and the fifth, or the third and the fourth, are really good. I'm working on the 5th book now, so there was some lag time between the 4th book, which, by the way, I know if you've read it, ends on a cliffhanger. There's some lag time between the 4th book and the 5th book, and that's because after January 6th and after me running for Congress in 2020, publisher didn't renew any of my fiction contracts because they, quote, didn't like my political trajectory. And it's not even necessarily being a Republican, it's being a Trump Republican is really what did it. And that's fine, whatever, shit happens. So it took a little bit, try to get back on our feet and figure out a way ahead. And I just said, to hell with it. I'm doing it without a publisher. I owe that to my readers. It's kind of ridiculous that they didn't renew the contracts, given that the sales track record was so strong of those books. They were all bestsellers in one way or another. But the 5th Eric Steele book, 20,000 words into that book right now. And I'm still trying to determine if it will be the end to the franchise or maybe just an end to the overall arc between 1 and 4. But that's happening now. Hope to have it out by the end of the year. I'm only telling folks that because a couple people or somebody asked about it in the live chat prior to the show. So I figured I might as well just talk about it right here at the top. Okay. So, folks, one of the things that I learned when I was in combat was that there are people in this world who wish to do us harm or want to kill us and kill the members of our family who don't even know us. They want to kill us simply for just existing and being an American. And that's just a fact. One of the things that kind of it was very shocking to realize this as a young 20 something. It was the first time I got shot at. I mean, it was exhilarating in a weird way because I'd never been shot at before. But I remember getting back on the base after that and say to myself, like, holy shit, somebody wants to kill me. Somebody wants me dead. If that bullet would have hit me, I'd be dead. And whoever that person is, they don't even know me. They've never met me. They have no idea what I stand for. You know, I mean, it's just really kind of a crazy thing. And that was a real life lesson that I picked up very quickly in Afghanistan. And you remember that story I told you yesterday? It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that the story I'm telling today is actually associated with the one yesterday. But the story I told you yesterday about how the Afghan National Army got baited into the ambush and a Marine got shot in the pelvis. It was really all about Jeff Hall and his heroism and a celebration of his life and legacy. And I talked about the regrets I had of getting into an argument with him before he died. Bothers me to this day, thinking about it a lot over the holiday and going into the new year. But what also happened as we were trying to get to that wounded Marine prior to Jeff Hall assaulting through enemy lines, we went in, we get trapped in this kill zone. And I told you yesterday they had 2 soldiers that were shot in the head. Well, one soldier, he was up on a 50 caliber machine gun in the truck. He was in a truck right in front of me. And you got to understand, like, the cliffs on either side of this canyon. I mean, you open your door, reach out your arm, you're touching a steep cliff that just ran straight up, right? So when you're in a machine gun on the top of a truck, you can traverse to the left, and see my little swivel chair, it actually works kind of well. You can traverse to the left, you can traverse to the right, you can traverse down, right? And the machine gun goes up, you know, so, but you can't, if the steep incline of the hill is so high, you can only traverse the machine gun up so much. And we had enemy all throughout dispersed through those cliffs. So machine gunners were having a real hard time hitting the targets of the enemy who were really firing at us from a really high elevation. So John St. Jean is, AKA the Haitian Hammer in my platoon, is manning a machine gun right in front of me. And I watch him just get shot in the head. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I thought St. Jean was dead. He gets shot in the head, falls down into his truck. Some next man up jumps on the gun and keeps going. But I saw the guy that shot him looking out the driver's side window of my truck. I saw this guy, this insurgent, really, who was an Al-Qaeda operative, sitting right in this tree. I mean, really not 20 feet from me. And what had happened was he fired at John St. Jean, and St. Jean fired that 50 cal at him at the exact same time. St. Jean's 50 caliber bullet hit him right in the stomach. And the only reason that round didn't tear the guy in half is because he was so close and the velocity of the bullet just went through very easily. But he hit St. Jean in the head at the same time. And this guy tumbles out of the tree and lands right next to my truck. And I mean, right next to my truck, right outside the driver's side window. And I'm looking through this window, through this dirt encrusted glass, right in the eyes of this insurgent, but of this terrorist who's looking right back at me with a gaping stomach wound here. Clearly, he's not going to make it. Knew that he was going to die, but looking in his eyes, let me tell you something, folks. This dude was filled with a hatred and rage that I did not think was possible. I mean, his eyes were black, like a shark's eyes. Like, it felt like I was looking to eyes that had no soul. He's completely consumed with hate. And even in his dying moments, you could tell he wanted me and everybody in my truck and everybody that I loved dead. Period. End of story. Full stop. Just could see it. I could sense it coming off of him. And one of my soldiers, a guy named Tim Stalter, who's since passed away as well, a real hero, such a tragedy that he was lost so young, sitting in the seat behind me, and he had a shotgun. He goes, let me put this guy out of his misery. And I'm paraphrasing. He's like, sure, let me kill him. Let me take this guy out. And he wasn't armed. And so I said, no, come on, sir, please let me kill this guy. Let me kill this guy. He would kill us. And I'm like, Stalter, damn it. No, sit down. You're not doing that. And I'm telling you, it's just strange that I had so much clarity in these types of chaotic moments. And I can only attribute this to a God thing. Again, I know maybe people that are watching and listening to the show, maybe God, maybe you believe something different. But for me, I just that clarity to me, the clarity of moral purpose, I just feel like it was just like, I just knew I didn't want him to kill this terrorist who was already dead. He just hadn't died yet, and have that death, have Stalter killing this guy be on my soldier's conscience for the rest of his life. Probably wouldn't have mattered to him in the moment, but I can guarantee you that that would have played over and over and over again in Stalter's head throughout the course of his life. And I didn't want that to happen. That disgusting dirtbag terrorist was not worth it. Like, my soldiers, to me, I'll just tell you right now, their lives were a hell of a lot more valuable than 1,000 of those terrorists. And I didn't want him to have that on his conscience. So I told him no. But again, the lesson, even when these terrorists were dead, dying, on their deathbed, the hatred that I saw in their eyes was like nothing that I have ever seen before. And so there are people in this world that wish to do us harm, that it makes no sense. There are people in this world that want to kill you. I know it might be disconcerting, but it's the truth, that want to kill you and kill your kids and just want to kill you because of all the things you have, just because you're an American. They don't give a damn whether you're a Republican or Democrat. By God, what I'm telling you folks is the truth. And I'm afraid that throughout the course of my life, I was talking to a friend of mine today. I'm afraid that this country has gotten soft and complacent. And we've talked about this on my show many times, just the idea of complacency. And complacency kills. Certainly in combat, soldier gets on an objective or gets up on an observation post. That big heavy helmet's uncomfortable. He unbuckles it, takes it off, and that's the exact moment he gets hit in the head. Or takes off his gloves that are supposed to be fire retardant, gets hit with a rocket propelled grenade in the side of the truck, shrapnel peppers his arms. Maybe the gloves protect. Takes off his eye protection, shrapnel hits him in the eye, goes blind in an eye. I always talk to my soldiers about how complacency kills and how you can't downgrading your uniform because you think you're safe for the moment in combat, when in reality you're surrounded by the enemy, is a form of complacency, and it can lead to terrible, terrible things. And in many ways, I feel like I feel like our country has gotten to a point where our elected leaders don't understand the world that we live in. I don't think that our elected leaders, and I'm not talking about all of them, but the vast majority of them, especially, let me tell you, especially the Democrats, they simply just don't, they just don't get it. They see the world how they'd like it to be instead of how it actually is, and that puts us all in very real danger. Look no further than the Biden administration's insane open borders policy that ushered in well over 10.5 million. Now, I said over 10.5 million illegal alien invaders on X today in a post, and a young woman was taking me to task saying it was way over 10.5 million. And she's right. Your point is well taken. I know it is well over 10.5 million, but let's just use 10.5 million for math's sake. If 0.01 of those people who have come into this country illegally wish to do us harm, wish to kill Americans, wish to kill you and your family just because you're an American, that's 1,000 people. We don't know their names. We don't know where they live. We don't know what their plans are. They've come into America and we have no ability to track them. And the reality is we probably have far more than 1,000 terrorists in this country that wish to do us harm. And this is the asymmetric insanity that is our open border. It just presents a danger to this country and to American citizens that is just difficult to describe in words. Way back in 2018 or 2019, can't quite remember the year, but it was back then, before I ran for anything, before I ran for office, before I was doing anything like this. I went on Fox News and I said that our open border would become one of the greatest national security threats in this country. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before. I got attacked by the left like crazy, but I was right. And now we have no idea where these enemies of America are. We have no ideas what their plans are. One of them was in Louisiana today. Now, listen, this guy, you're probably thinking, we'll get to this here in a second, but this guy who killed Americans in the New Year's Day terrorist attack, he was an American citizen from Texas, but he was clearly radicalized by ISIS. And I'll talk to you about all this in a second and how I think all of this is connected and what you need to be aware of. So stay right there. But first, let me tell you about My Patriot Supply. We're in crunch time now. A new administration will be sworn in soon, but as great as that is, it also means our enemies have days left to stir up trouble. I mean, look at what's playing out on the news cycle right now. And that could mean a cyber attack, an invasion, God forbid, a nuclear strike. So the longtime bureaucrats are until the longtime bureaucrats are out of Washington, I'm not taking my chances. That's why I have an emergency food supply of My Patriot Supply. Right now, they're offering $100 off their 3-month emergency food kit. It's got 2,000 calories per day for 3 whole months. Plenty to get you through even a prolonged emergency. All their food kits last for up to 25 years in storage. Plus, they come in rugged, weatherproof buckets. So all you got to do is go to preparewithvnn.com right now to order your 3-month emergency food kit. I've got an emergency food supply in my home because my safety and security is worth it. So is protecting my family. So go to preparewithvnn.com right now to order your 3-month emergency food kit right now. All right. Terrorist attack in New Orleans. Let me also just say this. This is the largest terrorist attack on U.S. soil in years, and the president of the United States is completely MIA on this. He put out a tweet, a post on X earlier today, but it's been crickets ever since. He's not addressed the nation at all. I find this to be very concerning, especially because this situation is evolving very, very rapidly. So here is what we know right now. The suspect is 42 years old, Shamsuddin Jabbar, right? A U.S. citizen from Texas, driving a white Ford pickup truck, which appears to have been rented. FBI is working to confirm how the subject came into possession of the vehicle. An ISIS flag, I could see it plain as day. It was underneath his license plate on this pole that rose up on the back, like over the bed of the pickup truck. For whatever reason, local law enforcement or FBI, when they got on the scene, decided to wrap that flag up tight so that you couldn't see the actual emblem on it. But it's clear that an ISIS flag and this terrorist was somehow affiliated with ISIS. We're not actually sure which terrorist faction of ISIS he was associated with yet, but he was clearly associated with ISIS. There was weapons and potential IEDs located in the subject's vehicle, and other potential IEDs were located in the French Quarter. So, folks, this is a big, big deal. There is clearly an ongoing terrorist threat here. I mean, we let in over, I told you before, 10.5 million illegal aliens under Biden in the last 4 years. 0.1% means that there's 1,000 people. That's a conservative estimate here in this country that want to do us harm. So when this initially happened, I immediately tuned into the press conferences to get a sense of what the local coverage was. I woke up to this morning. In fact, one of the kids that helps flag media for me on social media said, "Did you hear about the terrorist attack?" This is even before. This is early in the morning at like 8 a.m. I said, "I haven't heard about it yet." So I immediately tuned into the local coverage to get a sense of what was actually happening, because once national media takes it up and starts spinning it, it's harder to get a clearer picture. So I like to rely on local press events, local press conferences, local eyewitness testimony to just draw my own conclusions. But listen to the FBI agent in charge talk about this attack.
Kirkpatrick said we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if it's a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on. Our goal is to provide you additional information.
So the FBI's initial reaction was to go out. This is the very first, this is her first press conference. The FBI's initial reaction to this is not a terrorist event. Not 5 minutes later did the Bureau release a statement saying this is being investigated as a terrorist attack. So let me ask you a question. It's rhetorical. I think we as the American people deserve to know who made the decision early on to say this isn't a terrorist attack. Why did the FBI reverse course after saying that this was not an act of terror, especially since we knew within seconds after the initial terrorist attack that there was an ISIS flag on this guy's truck? And here's the thing. When Elon Musk says that X is now the most powerful free speech platform in the world, that citizen journalists will replace, journalists that work for these networks, I think this is a good example of what he means. Because citizen journalists who were on the scene of that horrific terrorist attack got pictures of this dude's truck and posted them on X before the FBI was able to put a lid on the entire situation and really lock it down. As far as the information is concerned, lock it down. So there were pictures out there of what clearly looked to be a black flag that was wrapped up tightly, but having seen and fought these guys in combat before, I'm sure you all know what the ISIS flag looks like. We saw pictures of the ISIS flag. I thought, oh man, unfurl that flag certainly looks like it could be an ISIS flag. Moreover, who made the decision to roll up the flag and hide it? Why the lack of transparency about the asymmetric threat that we face in this country? I mean, these are valid questions, especially when the impulse of so many of these corporate media outlets and these liberal media outlets are to say, car crashes into crowd. They completely whitewash the fact that it was a terrorist attack. They act as if the car drove itself, or car crash victim, right? They're very deliberate in their lack of transparency, and that has me asking a lot of questions. But again, thank God for X. Because the motivation, I mean, the FBI, I think, would have covered this up. I think that they would have tried to cover this up. And shortly after, pictures of the pickup truck leaked, the body of the actual shooter who lay dead on the road leaked as well. And you could see he was not a white dude, as I'm sure many in the media would have wanted, a white Trump supporter or something like that, because that's the narrative they always want to push, that it's the white MAGA Trump supporters that are terrorist, domestic terror threats. And so you could bet your ass that if God forbid something like that happened, that news would have broken like that. But the FBI was absolutely going to try to put a lid on this until X and all the citizen journalists got involved and put all this information out. But I think that press conference is to me just the latest example of why the FBI has just totally lost the trust of the American people. And so as I continued to do a little bit of research on what was happening, On Bourbon Street, they have these big steel barriers because, over time, over the last couple of years, one of the tactics, techniques, and procedures of these terrorists is to use vehicles to mow down large groups of people. This just happened in Germany not a couple of weeks ago. And so these cities run by Democrats installed these metal barriers to stop that stuff. Well, somebody in New Orleans made the call to ensure that those barriers were down on New Year's Eve. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who made that call, but I think we, the people, have a right to know who it was. But when I talk about barriers, this is what I mean. Watch this.
Doug McCash, I'm with NOLA.com, and lately I've been writing about the mayor and governor's proposals to make the French Quarter safer. And one of those proposals was to have mechanical barriers that would prevent vehicles from approaching Bourbon Street after certain hours.
So we take it down just for you. Here you go. You ready? You ready? That exciting.
There were terrorist attacks in Nice and in Berlin where terrorists used trucks as weapons. And this is supposed to protect us from that.
I don't think it's that bad of an idea. Keeps cars from running us over when we're drunk, right?
Well spoken, young man. Well spoken. But the point, keeps cars from running us over. And you heard, from that video that wasn't actually related to this attack, video was taken far in advance. Say, hey, the whole point of these barriers is to protect the people who walk up and down this street from terrorist attacks. So why then were those barriers down on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, which anyone with half a brain in their head knows is a magnet for terrorism? Large groups of Americans closely packed together, many of whom are drinking and perhaps don't have all of their wits about them. It's a target-rich environment for a terrorist attack of this type. So next question is, why were those barriers down and who made the decision to put them down? CNN interviewed a bystander of all this, and he asked the same exact question. Listen for yourself.
We have these hydraulic steel barriers from past events. Last Mardi Gras, this happened to an extent, maybe not terrorism, but still people getting hit in mass population with vehicles. Those barricades were not up, period. They had the flimsy orange ones that you could just push over with your finger. We actually thought it was kind of odd because usually when you get to Bourbon Street, you can turn your back to Canal and not worry about anything. You can just walk the street, especially on New Year's, and there were still vehicles coming after 8 p.m. And then, the fact that they never raised them, that's how this guy was able to get down Bourbon Street so quickly and cause so much damage. Because there's other...
Okay, listen. So they said during the press conference, like the local law enforcement, we're going to talk about the local law enforcement here in a second. And by the way, some of these freaking cops were heroes. I gotta have to make sure that we celebrate them. But people were saying, some of the local elected officials were saying that the barriers malfunctioned. Okay. Sometimes that stuff happens. Then why didn't you put concrete barriers up? Those orange barrels do nothing. If we know, we've learned a couple of things as we've progressed through this show, that we had 10.5 million plus illegal alien invaders come across this border. If only 0.1% of them are bad actors, that's 1,000 plus people who want to do us harm. Remember the video I played for you 6 months ago of a reporter talking to a terrorist, an alleged terrorist at Eagle Pass, who said, "Oh, you don't know my name, but you will soon." And there are people that are pouring into this country that hate us. So we know that they're here. The FBI knows that they're here. The CIA knows that they're here. Brian Dean Wright on this show for the last 3 months has been saying this scares the shit out of him, and it's just a matter of time for this nightmare scenario to unfold. You heard people say, hey, these barriers are intended to protect people from terrorist attacks, so they malfunction. We understand that. That kind of shit happens. We know that these car-borne terrorist attacks that kill large groups of people, they look for soft targets like Bourbon Street. They look for days of significance like New Year's Eve, like New Year's Day, like Christmas Day, like Easter, to conduct these attacks. So if you know all of this, why are you in the barriers or malfunction? How do you not make the decision to put concrete barriers down to protect people? These are just questions. These are just one failure after the next. And so the New Orleans police chief is a woman named Ann Kirkpatrick. Okay. She gave a press conference today. I want you to hear a little bit of it. And then I'm going to give you some of my thoughts here.
Thank you, Governor and Mayor. For those who do not know me, my name is Ann Kirkpatrick. I'm the Chief of Police of New Orleans. My official title is Superintendent, but my role is as Chief of Police. You know, you've heard some of the details today, and over the last 24 hours, we had approximately 400 officers in the French Quarter. And as we know, this is not just an act of terrorism. This is evil. And when we face evil, we have a choice. We can run in fear, or we can indeed stand in strength. In a time of crisis, people are looking for leadership. You are looking at the leadership. And I promise you, as the Chief of Police of this city has been tried by fire before. But fire purifies. Fire makes things stronger. We have a plan. We know what to do. We are going to get these people. There is a path forward. Very pleased that we will be back to having a wonderful game tomorrow night. New Orleans police have proven their ability to make the city safer.
Okay. So I'm watching your live reactions to this in the live chat. And Dawn says grandma has a plan. Just listen. This might I feel like I gotta say it. I feel like I just gotta say it. Why is an elderly woman a police chief in a very dangerous city? Okay, I'm just saying something tells me that Chief Kirkpatrick could get accosted by a 12-year-old boy who wants to rob her on the street and lose. Something tells me that she might not be equipped for this. And Tim Young said on X, before being hired in New Orleans, she was the head of police in Oakland, California, where she was fired. And she later sued Oakland and got a $1.5 million settlement. Just a couple of years before this horrific terrorist attack, she ran over or strikes two pedestrians with her vehicle, injuring one. And you're seeing that right there on your screen. So what is going on here, folks? Why? We got a granny police chief who seems to be in over her head. And by the way, listen, I could be completely wrong, okay? And I know this might seem harsh, but I just, listen, this DEI bullshit, it just really upsets me in these Democrat cities where you have these people appointed to these positions who have no business being in these positions, and they're only there because they want to check a block. That might work in every other profession in the world. I mean, it actually doesn't. I'm not saying it does, but I'm just saying it's especially dangerous in jobs that require putting your life on the line both for the country abroad or protecting people at home. You know, I don't, please don't be offended by this. And let me ask you, like, Battle Crew, am I especially interested to hear from the women of the group? Because if I'm sounding like a callous asshole dude, please let me know. I don't mean to sound like that, but I kind of feel the same way about this that I felt about the Secret Service agent who was trying to cover Trump after the July 13th assassination. I don't doubt her courage. I don't doubt her skill. I really don't doubt any of that. I just wonder, why is a 5'0" woman trying to protect a 6'4", 200+ pound man? She doesn't even cover his body when she puts herself on top of him to try to shield him. Am I wrong about this? I mean, if I'm wrong about this, please tell me. I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but I just think that in this line of work, and actually there's many lines of work, but like, you mean to tell me this woman is the best qualified person to do this job? Come on. The older I get, the more I agree with Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men. I don't know if you ever, let me come to the live chat. Battle Crew, have you ever seen the movie A Few Good Men? I want to hear. Thank you for saying, some of you all saying common sense. I agree. No grandma in this position. Okay, this is awesome. This is okay. It makes me feel better to hear what the Battle Crew is thinking about this, because I am really not trying to be insensitive here. I'm just trying to say, is this the best qualified person to have in this job? And is the city safer because this person is there? I don't think that that's the case. But let me just read you this from A Few Good Men. Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's going to do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago. You curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives, and my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide and then questions the manner in which I provide it. Now, I want to be clear about something. I don't think that Santiago should have died. I don't like that. But everything else that he says here is completely on point. Folks, this country, we are at war. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to send America's troops abroad. But there are people here in this country that want to kill us. There are people in the world that are at war with us, whether we like it or not. And I want people in these positions who I know will save lives and not cost them. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of people getting hurt. And it doesn't matter the profession. I mean, this insane liberal PC DEI nonsense gets people killed. And in the dangerous world that we live in, that we're laying out here on this show, I want the best and the brightest in these positions to protect the American people. For God's sake, the man who runs this country is an animated corpse, doesn't even know where he is. It's been completely MIA in the wake of the largest terrorist attack on this nation's soil in a very long time. How can we possibly look ourselves in the mirror and say, yes, we have the best and the brightest in all of these positions? We don't. We don't. But we do have some absolutely courageous officers. And by the way, maybe I'm giving Chief Kirkpatrick a very unfair bad rap here. I'm not saying that I might not be right about this. She might be great. Her officers might love her. Her officers might respect her. The town might love and respect her. I'm just saying, I hate to judge a book by its cover, but in this instance, I just am not. I'm just saying. But there were some real heroes out there, and I want to show you this, and I want to showcase these officers, people who run towards the sound of gunfire when people need help. Now, for folks who are listening and not watching, what I'm going to show is closed circuit camera of cops getting the call and then sprinting immediately in unison together, not hesitating for a second to go and help others.